How do you say goodbye to a family you've lived alongside for more than a decade? For Sam Heughan, the answer wasn't in a speech or some grand theatrical gesture, but in a drink. A simple cocktail, born in his own garden, became the emotional centerpiece of a farewell that would mark the end of an era. It was a crisp evening in Scotland, the kind of night when the air carried the faint promise of autumn. Sam's countryside home glowed with warmth as the cast and crew of Outlander gathered together to close a chapter that had stretched across 11 unforgettable years. The series had given him fame, fortune, and endless memories. But more importantly, it had given him each other. To Sam, these weren't colleagues. They were family. And as the laughter swelled and glasses clinked in celebration, he quietly revealed his secret gift for the evening, a drink no one had ever tasted before. On the kitchen counter stood a tall bottle of pale green liquid, shimmering faintly under the golden lights. Sam called it the Garden Appellini. The name might have sounded playful, but the story behind it carried a gravity that struck at the heart. For years, an old apple tree had stood in his garden, barren and stubborn, never once producing fruit. Yet as filming wrapped on the final season of Outlander, something shifted. The tree, as if recognizing the close of one journey, suddenly bore crab apples, small, sharp, and resilient little fruits. Maybe they knew I'd come to the end of my path with Outlander, Sam later wrote in his cocktail diaries. In that moment, the apples felt like a sign, a parting gift from nature itself. He couldn't let them go to waste. Instead, he chose to create something new, something that captured the bittersweetness of farewell. Using his award-winning Sassenach gin, celebrated for its crisp botanicals, Sam began to experiment. He added vodka for depth, chopped 10 of the tiny crab apples, and left them to infuse for days, drawing out the tang. Once strained, he stirred in a whisper of vermouth, watching the mixture take on a delicate pale green hue, like a memory suspended in glass. The result even surprised him: fresh, clean, yet smooth as silk, leaving a buttery echo on the tongue. That night, as he poured the first round, the room fell silent. His Outlander family, glasses in hand, tasted the creation with curiosity. The first sip brought a chorus of delighted exclamations. The drink was unusual but comforting, sharp yet soft, a mirror of the emotions hanging in the air. The cast, who had weathered battles, romances, and heartbreaks on screen, now found themselves bound by something simple and human, the taste of Sam's garden. They all like a tipple, Sam quipped, his Scottish humour cutting through the sentimentality. Yet behind the laughter was a quiet pride. It wasn't just a cocktail. It was a piece of himself, of his home, of the years they had built together. As the night stretched on, bottles emptied quickly. Sam kept shaking, stirring, pouring. Each glass carried with it a story, a memory, a laugh. The Appellini became more than a farewell drink. It became a ritual, a final bond shared among people who knew they might never stand together like this again. There was something almost poetic in it. A barren fruit tree blossoming at the very moment Sam's longest professional chapter came to a close. From soreness, sweetness. From endings, creation. For Sam, it was a reminder that life's most powerful moments often arrive unannounced, wrapped in the simplest things: a tree, a fruit, a cocktail. Yet, as meaningful as the Appellini was, it was only the beginning of that night's tale. Because behind the elegance of clinking glasses and heartfelt toasts, chaos was quietly stirring. The farewell would not remain soft and sentimental. Something wild, unplanned, and utterly unforgettable was about to erupt, transforming this quiet Scottish evening into one of the most legendary parties the Outlander cast would ever remember. If the first half of the night belonged to sentiment, the second belonged to unbridled joy. And it all began with a single apple, small, sour, almost forgettable. Somewhere between another round of Sam's Appellinis, a crab apple rolled across the floor. Richard Rankin, mischief glinting in his eye, scooped it up, weighed it in his palm, and, without warning, tossed it across the room. The apple bounced harmlessly against a shoulder, but its effect was explosive. Laughter roared, echoing through the house like a spark to kindling. Sophie Skelton quickly joined in, launching another apple toward the kitchen. Within seconds, the quiet evening dissolved into pure chaos. The Outlander cast, actors who had spent years wielding swords, muskets, and time travel, were now locked in an impromptu food fight. Sam himself wasn't spared. One moment he was mixing drinks, the next he was ducking behind a chair as an apple whizzed past his head. When another hit him square in the chest, he threw up his hands and laughed. It escalated pretty quickly, he later admitted, and he wasn't wrong. There was no stopping it. Everyone was involved. Even Katrina Balfe, usually elegance personified, was caught darting across the room with a fistful of apples, grinning like a schoolgirl. The living room turned into a battlefield of joy. Furniture became fortresses, cushions became shields. Sharp thuds of apples smacking against walls mixed with shrieks of laughter. It was messy, chaotic, but pure magic. These were people who had spent more than a decade together, bound by a story that had changed their lives, now suddenly free to play like children. And when the apples finally ran out, Sam returned to the bar, this time trading Appleanis for Tommy's margaritas, bright, bold, full of fire. Glasses clinked again, flushed faces gathered in the kitchen, and the night's energy soared higher. The apple fight hadn't been a disruption. It was the perfect crescendo, proof that farewells don't need to be quiet or solemn, they can be loud, messy, unforgettable. There was poetry in it all. The apples had started as a symbol of parting, bitter fruit reborn as a sweet cocktail. Yet in the end, they became something greater. A playful weapon, a spark of chaos, a reason for laughter until bellies ached. Out of soreness, sweetness. Out of endings, joy. For Sam, watching his friends revel in the madness was bittersweet. He was the host, the alchemist who turned his garden into a memory. But he was also just one of them, a man saying goodbye to a role that had defined him for more than a decade. He saw the faces of his chosen family lit up with laughter and knew this night would live on long after the credits rolled on Outlander's final season. Later, in his cocktail diaries, Sam wrote that the Appellini was more than a drink. It was a symbol, a gesture of gratitude, an invitation to create memories with the people who matter. If you want to impress your partner, he explained, this is the one for your date night. It wasn't about alcohol. It was about effort, about turning the ordinary into something extraordinary. That advice, tucked between recipes and reflections, revealed something true about Sam himself. He wasn't just the star of Outlander or the founder of Sassenach Spirits. He was a man who valued connection, who believed in the power of small gestures, who understood that sometimes a drink could speak louder than words. By the time dawn brushed over the Scottish hills, the bottles were empty, the apples scattered, the laughter still hanging in the air. Guests stumbled into the cool night, some nursing sore arms from their apple battles, others humming with the buzz of gin and tequila, but each carried something intangible. The kind of memory that doesn't fade, that binds people long after moments pass. The Appellini might have been drained from the glasses, but its spirit lingered. This was more than a farewell to a show. It was a celebration of friendship, family, and the wild, beautiful chaos that happens when people who love each other let go. In the end, the night didn't just close a chapter, it carved a legend. And if you ever find yourself holding a glass of something sweet and sharp, think of that house in Scotland, the laughter in the dark, and the apples flying through the air. Perhaps that is the true taste of goodbye. And yet, even as dawn painted the Scottish hills with soft light, no one truly felt it was an ending. There was still a sense that something lingered, unfinished, waiting to be written. Perhaps it was in the way Sam's apple tree now stood proudly in his garden, its branches heavy with the promise of more fruit. Or perhaps it was in the laughter that still echoed faintly in the walls of his home, as if daring them all to return one day. The Appellini had been drained, the bottles emptied, but the spirit of that night lived on, unbroken. Somewhere between the clinking glasses and the chaos of apples flying across the room, a seed had been planted, not just of memory, but of possibility. Because farewells, as Sam knew, are never truly final. They are simply the beginning of something else. And so, as his friends disappeared into the morning mist, Sam stood for a moment at his doorway, smiling to himself. Perhaps there would be another drink, another gathering, another story still to be told. After all, some journeys don't end. They simply change shape, waiting for the right moment to begin again.